Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Meso. Today we're going to continue the series, the Unported playlist, where I take a look at my favorite unported arcade games of all time, but we are right in the middle of Janktoberfest, so I have 64th Street by Jaleco today. And while I absolutely feel like this game could have been incredible, it does fight you at every turn to have fun, in a good way and in a bad way. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, it definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But 64th Street lulls you in with a false sense of pure entertainment. The first stage is absolutely great. It's got some great fighting game mechanics, and it is a ton of fun. And being able to throw an opponent into a wall and have a cat pop out of it as a power-up is just so much fun. And you've heard about wall meat in Castlevania, well, very shortly you're going to start seeing some ship cake in this game. And what I love so much about 64th Street is it's a very competent beat 'em up, and the first stage to like stage and a half is some of the most fun you can have in a beat 'em up. And it's all down to extremely good hit registration. Sometimes in a beat 'em up you feel like your punches should be hitting, or your kick should be hitting, and your opponent doesn't react. You need to be lined up perfectly. 64th Street does not have that issue whatsoever. The issue with this game is that after the first stage and a half, they start throwing so many high-powered enemies at you and slowing you down so much that the game becomes incredibly boring and repetitive. It's like 30% an absolutely A- tier beat 'em up, married to 2/3 of a C tier slog throughout an actual arcade game. And that is so disappointing because this could have been one of those greats, but it really just kind of falls apart in the back 2/3 of the game. Not only with its ability to basically make what would seem like a 2-minute level last 5 minutes, but also an absolute cheapness in being able to get juggled by the enemies. And you will see in the first boss right here, you're going to get a whiff of that as well, where suddenly you will get staggered, you'll get stun locked, and you'll lose a life without ever being able to actually regain control of your playable character, which is just such a bummer because you can tell this game had a lot of promise. They just needed to spend more time on balancing your opponents out as far as their health bars and ability to stagger you are concerned, and make the game a little bit longer as far as the graphics are concerned. But you'll see here, jumping ahead on the stage 2 boss, he is just going to spin around and absolutely stun lock me there. I'm never going to be able to gain control again. But what you can do in this game, which is fun but also broken, is you can use the same cheese mechanics against pretty much any boss you find. Back this pirate up towards that desk there and then just start throwing flying knees. He cannot escape, he can never attack you, you are going to get a free victory on it. So the balance in this game is just wildly off. It starts so well and then becomes incredibly frustrating as you move on. But as we move to Smuggler's Wharf here, again, this is a very interesting graphical style. It's trying to be both realistic and using a very realistic color palette while also feeling like the straight 90s. That dude in the back there with the blue vest looks like he is a takeout cup from the early 90s. If you're alive, you're going to know what that cup looks like in your head, and if you won't, you'll have no idea what I am talking about. But as far as the fighting mechanics in this beat 'em up are concerned, I think they're a 10 out of 10. The punches, the kicks all land with a satisfying thud in the sound effects, and it really does feel like you are beating the ever-loving hell out of the person in front of you. All of the alignment issues by moving forward or backwards into the screen are absolutely spot on. Had they just not made this game artificially long towards the back half and made the balance in a lot of the bosses better, this might be one of those close to greatest beat 'em ups of all time. But this is what happens when you don't spend enough time on a game, and right there, that is that ship cake I was talking about. There's so many weird power-ups in this game to give you more health, and a lot of them involve throwing your opponent into the background and smashing something out of the wall, and sometimes cats pop out of the wall. Makes no sense to me whatsoever, but I'm not complaining. What you'll see here, the game still holds up relatively well through this first portion of the video, but trust me, after I give you the music sample, you're going to start to see how incredibly frustrating this game truly can become. But I will say, Jaleco, we're hit or miss on soundtrack departments, but I actually really like the soundtrack in 64th Street. It has the vibe I'm going for, so listen and I'll be right back to tell you more about the game. I just like the soundtrack. It kind of fits the detective theme story that's going on here, but if you haven't noticed already, suddenly we're spending a lot more time on individual screens with a lot more enemies that have a lot more health bar than we've been seeing earlier in the game. And this is what I mean when the back half definitely of 64th Street just becomes a little bit of a slog. Suddenly you're going to be facing 4, 5, 6 opponents on one screen, half of which have a boss's worth of health bar from earlier in the game, and you're going to beat all 6 of them and then move like 5 feet into the foreground and have to do it all over again. Suddenly this game slows down and barely lets you progress whatsoever, and it feels in a lot of ways like the developers were running out of time, and to get a full game experience out of it, they made the back half last a lot longer without having to draw any more art. But again, you can just cheese people in this game. Any sort of wall, including the corner of this tunnel here, are going to be your friend. If you get some of these high-powered opponents lined up against it, you can just continually throw knees into them until they are dead. I'm not saying it's the most fun mechanic, but if you do want to progress, it is one that you want to get used to relatively quickly. Until you get to this boss right here, or this set of bosses, which suddenly have a complete counter to that one move we've been utilizing. They're going to continue to stagger me the entire time I fight them. I went and counted how many credits I went through just to get through this one area. It was 13. If you were paying 50 cents a playthrough, that is $7.50 just to get through this one area. And because there's 2 bosses and they're constantly juggling you back and forth, actually trying to get hits in on them becomes an exercise in sheer frustration. This one boss battle is where 64th Street goes from potentially being right underneath some of the best beat 'em ups of all time in my opinion, to an exercise in pure frustration. This could have been incredible, but you'll see here, now that we're into the further stages, just look at how much time we spend fighting these opponents, and I am putting edits in this. It was 1 minute and 10 seconds fighting these guys on this one screen, and the minute we get to progress, you're going to see what happens after that. This is where the game becomes work and not fun, and that's so unfortunate. I move forward about 3 to 4 feet, and that's it. The screen freezes again, and I'm going to be here for another 2 minutes fighting these opponents, some of which also have a boss's worth of health bar. The game artificially slows itself down and becomes work, and that is just so unfortunate. As we even get further into the game, I would say the art loses a little bit of its charm as well. This background area here just looks like it was slightly rushed. This is one half of a very good game married to one half of a very not great game, and that is why it's on Janktoberfest. It kind of feels like the developers ran out of time, budget, or both and had to ship something, so they tried to get the game out that they could. And I will say, at least as far as this boss is concerned, cheap as hell, but definitely fun to look at. This half mechanical robot man kind of with a steampunk vibe going on. It is a hard fight, but it is at least a fun one. And now that we're getting towards the end of the game, we get to the headquarters, you're going to spend 2 minutes just trying to get to the front door. The game is going to throw 6 opponents at you at one time. They're going to be coming from every different direction. They're going to juggle you. Even when you're attacking one person, you're going to get hit from behind, and it's basically going to be impossible. Now, this does get slightly easier if you bring a second player along. That's always going to be a benefit, but honestly, even then it's frustrating. But again, great soundtrack. I really do love it. 30 seconds, and I'll be right back. Simple music, but it does work in context. You're going to see we have to refight all of the bosses again, and we can use the same cheese strategies against some of them. But this dude right here, who looks like a slickback Andre the Giant, who's about 75 years old, is going to prove even more difficult than before, because it just seems like no matter what move you do, they have a move to counter it. As we move even further in, now we have 5 dudes, all with these massive life bars, just waiting to beat you before you get to this door. If you can get them all in the right place at the right time, you can use that flying knee and juggle them all, and that's really the only way where you're going to get any progress without just having to waste through quarters. You can totally just credit spam this thing and see the ending of it, but that's not a fun experience, and that's why 64th Street ends up on Janktoberfest. It had all the potential to be great, it just couldn't live up to it. And look, you have to fight these same bosses a second time in this one stage. It's the third time in the game we've seen them, and it's going to juggle me again, stun lock me, and make me take another credit, and I never even got to actually use the controls in the game again. So that's why 64th Street is such a letdown. The first 7 to 10 minutes of this game show so much promise, you're having such a good time, and then suddenly it becomes incredibly difficult. So much so that for the long play, I didn't even finish the game, I had had enough. Leave me a comment down below, tell me if you ever played this game, I would be curious, and whether or not you think it deserves to be on Janktoberfest. But short of that, we are done. I'll have videos throughout the week and more Jank next week. See you guys next time. Bye bye.